November 21, 2025, Canon closes its Zhongshan factory after 24 years, leaving thousands of shocked workers unemployed overnight. Officials blamed shrinking demand, but as Japanese and Taiwanese giants quietly pull out, social media explodes with fear and anger. Was this just business, or are rising political tensions forcing a foreign corporate exodus from China? The real story behind these vanishing factories is far more complicated than anyone admits. What happens when an economic miracle begins to unravel? The gates at Canon's Zhongshan factory closed for the last time on November 21, 2025. Inside, the silence felt unreal. For nearly a quarter century, this plant had been a fixture in Guangdong, churning out laser printers for markets around the world. Some workers had spent their entire adult lives here, clocking in before sunrise and leaving after dark, year after year. Now, after 24 years, thousands found themselves suddenly jobless. No warning, no gradual wind down, just a posted notice and a line outside the security office. The shock rippled quickly. By the end of that day, chat groups and social media feeds in Zhongshan were filled with disbelief and anger. "How can a Fortune 500 company just shut down like this?" one worker posted. Others asked what would happen to their families, their savings, their future. The sense of betrayal was raw. For many, Canon had offered a rare sense of stability in a changing world. Now, that anchor was gone. Older employees remembered the boom years, when the factory floor buzzed with overtime and bonuses, and management promised steady work for anyone willing to put in the hours. Even as recently as 2019, most workers felt secure. Now the mood had flipped. "Back then we weren't afraid," a technician in her 40s told a local paper. "Now the fear is unbearable." The official explanation, shrinking global demand for laser printers and competition from Chinese brands, did little to settle nerves. Few believed that business alone could explain such a sudden departure after so many years. Rumors spread that something bigger was driving the exit, something beyond the factory gates. But for those left standing outside, the reasons hardly mattered. What mattered was the immediate scramble to find new work in a city where manufacturing jobs were vanishing fast. Some rushed to sign up for delivery apps or ride-hailing services, hoping to make ends meet. Others lined up at job fairs, clutching resumes and hoping their years at Canon would count for something. Many worried about losing not just income, but health insurance, pensions, and the sense of pride that came from building something real. The closure cut deeper than lost paychecks. It shattered the expectation that hard work and loyalty would be repaid. As the days passed, the story of Zhongshan's closure spread far beyond the city. It became a warning for factory workers across China. Even the biggest names could vanish overnight. The shockwaves lingered, fueling anxiety in households and on factory floors up and down the coast. In the space of a single morning, thousands of lives had been upended, and a 24-year chapter in China's manufacturing story had closed without ceremony. A Japanese industry insider, speaking on condition of anonymity, described a new kind of risk calculation spreading through boardrooms in Tokyo. The abruptness of Canon's exit, he said, made sense only when seen against the backdrop of growing uncertainty between China and its neighbors. In late 2024, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's public statement that Japan's self-defense forces might intervene if Taiwan faced a crisis sent a jolt through the region's diplomatic circles. Beijing's response was swift and pointed. Chinese warships began conducting drills near disputed waters, and state media issued warnings against travel to Japan. Rumors of seafood import bans and other trade restrictions started circulating among Japanese exporters. Within weeks, the business climate turned icy. More than 20 planned China and Japan business events were called off in the first half of 2025, from trade fairs to investment forums. Executives who once saw China as a pillar of growth now found themselves facing a wall of canceled meetings and sudden regulatory hurdles. Even companies with decades of experience in the Chinese market began to question whether it was still possible to operate without political interference. The insider described how these developments changed the conversation inside Japanese firms. In the past, a factory facing weak demand might try to ride out the storm, cutting shifts, trimming bonuses, or seeking local partners. Now the calculus was different. With every new diplomatic spat, the risk of sudden disruption grew. The fear was not just about profits, but about being caught in the crossfire of a larger political struggle. In this new environment, even a rumor could trigger a crisis. One executive recalled how the mere suggestion of seafood restrictions sent shockwaves through supply chains as importers scrambled to reroute shipments. The memory of Beijing's earlier boycotts over historical disputes or trade disagreements remained fresh in corporate minds. "You never know when the next phone call will come," he said. "It could be a new regulation, a canceled license, or just a warning to be careful." The result was a risk premium that no business plan could ignore. Companies weighed not just the cost of doing business, but the risk of losing everything overnight. The closure of Canon's Zhongshan plant became a cautionary tale, a sign that even the most established foreign firms could be forced to exit on short notice. For many in Japanese industry, the message was clear: the risks of staying in China now outweighed the rewards. Japanese corporate investment in China has fallen at a pace not seen in decades. Data from the Japan External Trade Organization shows direct investment plunged more than 30% in the first half of 2025. Major firms are not just pausing expansion, they are packing up and leaving. Mitsubishi Motors stands out as an unmistakable example. After a 53% collapse in sales across China and much of Asia, Mitsubishi announced it would end all production and sales of vehicles in China. The company shuttered its joint venture factory in Changsha, a plant that once symbolized Japan's automotive ambitions on the mainland. Only 7,000 units were sold in markets where Mitsubishi once aimed for leadership. The electronics sector is seeing the same pattern. Sony's retreat has been quiet but unmistakable. The Xperia phone WeChat service account now displays a self-cancellation notice. The mobile section has vanished from Sony China's website, and the company's official Weibo has been silent since March. This is not just about phones. It is about a broader rethink of what Japanese brands can risk in China. Panasonic, meanwhile, has doubled down on electric vehicle-related business in Shanghai, but it is pulled out of low-end appliances, shutting down lines in Tianjin and Hangzhou. For consumers, this means fewer Japanese microwaves and rice cookers on store shelves, and for workers, it means more pink slips. Toshiba has licensed away its TV brand, leaving only private label products behind. Sharp's market share for phones and televisions in China has dropped below 0.5%. The company's smartphone lines have quietly disappeared, its focus shifting to commercial displays and medical equipment. These moves are not just cost-cutting, they are calculated efforts to reduce exposure to a market now seen as unpredictable and high risk. Behind every closure is a boardroom discussion weighing not only profits but the risk of sudden regulatory hurdles, diplomatic spats, or even outright boycotts. Executives who once saw China as a pillar of growth now talk about risk mitigation, supply chain resilience, and the need to bring core production closer to home. The numbers and the names, Mitsubishi, Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, Sharp, tell a clear story. The era of Japanese expansion in China is over. What is left is a scramble to adapt and a growing sense among corporate managers that the old playbook no longer applies. Tamura Electric's supply chain planner begins each morning with a new set of maps. The old model, one sprawling production base in China feeding the world, has been replaced by a patchwork of shifting routes and backup plans. By 2028, Tamura will cut its China output by 30%, moving current sensor production to Saitama, Japan, and ramping up new lines in Mexico and Europe. The goal is no longer just cost, but certainty, knowing that a regulatory change or diplomatic spat will not freeze shipments overnight. TDK's planners face similar calculations. In the past, smartphone battery modules rolled out of Dalian by the million, destined for global assembly plants. Now the company is relocating this core production to Haryana, India, aiming for completion by the end of 2025. The impact reaches beyond the factory gates. In Dalian, local shops and service providers brace for the loss of steady business as TDK's orders dry up. The ripple effect is clear. Every job lost on the line means less demand for lunches, less need for buses, and fewer repairs for the machines that kept the plant humming. This shift is not limited to component makers. Japanese retail giants are redrawing their own maps. Family Mart, once a symbol of foreign convenience in northern Chinese cities, is shuttering around 100 stores in those regions. The chain is now focusing on the Yangtze and Pearl River deltas, areas seen as safer bets with higher incomes and a steadier flow of customers. Other Japanese convenience brands have hit pause on expanding into second- and third-tier cities. Instead, they are choosing franchise or joint venture models, sharing risk with local partners and trimming direct exposure. The result is a visible retreat. Streets that once boasted a cluster of Japanese brands are thinning out, especially beyond the richest urban centers. For supply chain managers, the message is clear. Core, high-value production is moving closer to home or to new partners in India, Southeast Asia, and Mexico. For workers and small businesses in China's interior, the consequences are just beginning to unfold. A slow erasure of jobs, customers, and the sense that global trade will always flow through their city. In boardrooms across Taipei, the old calculus of China as a manufacturing base has collapsed. By the first half of 2025, Taiwanese investment in China had shrunk to just 2.7% of all outbound capital, a historic low for an economy once deeply tied to the mainland. Executives who once saw the Pearl River Delta as their default expansion zone now speak openly about risk, not just opportunity. Jingba Electronics, a fixture in Dongguan for nearly 30 years, announced its full shutdown in November 2025. The final shipment left the factory floor as workers collected their last paychecks and management prepared to restart operations in Thailand. Jingba's exit is only one among many. Surveys show 63% of Taiwanese companies leaving China are now choosing Southeast Asia as their next base, drawn by lower costs and political stability. Trade numbers tell the rest of the story. In October 2025, Taiwan's exports to the United States reached $21.1 billion, topping exports to China for the first time in modern history. The shift is not incremental, it is a leap. From January to October 2025, exports to the United States surged 63.3% to $151.6 billion, while shipments to China grew just 13%. The old pattern of cross-strait integration has given way to a new United States-centered trade map, shaped as much by Washington's pressure as by Taipei's own calculations. The economic realignment is matched by security moves. November 2025 brought a formal intelligence sharing agreement between Japan and Taiwan, a step once considered unthinkable. At the same time, Taiwan lifted all remaining bans on food imports from Fukushima, and government leaders began publicly promoting Japanese products and seafood. The message was clear: Taiwan's future is now bound up with Japan and the United States, not just in trade, but in technology and defense. Nowhere is this shift more visible than in semiconductors. In April 2025, TSMC's new fab in Kumamoto began production, creating a strategic supply hub on Japanese soil. For Taiwan's manufacturing leaders, the Kumamoto project is more than just a factory. It is a hedge against cross-strait risk, a guarantee that the island's technology will remain essential to global supply chains even if tensions flare. The decisions playing out in these boardrooms are not just about profit, but about survival in a world where alliances matter as much as efficiency. The result is a regional order being redrawn, one factory, one trade route, and one strategic partnership at a time. On the assembly line at Foxconn's Zhengzhou campus, the rhythm that once drove the world's largest iPhone factory has stalled. In 2025, Apple shifted about 40% of its iPhone production to India, a move that reshaped global supply chains overnight. The impact on China was immediate. The newest iPhone model sold just 50,000 units in its first 2 weeks on the Chinese market, a fraction of previous launches. As orders dried up, Foxconn began dismantling production lines, and rumors of mass layoffs spread quickly through the dormitories. By the end of the year, up to 100,000 jobs were at risk across Foxconn's Chinese campuses, from Zhengzhou to Shenzhen and Dongguan. A manager who had spent 15 years overseeing teams on the floor described the mood as anxious and hollow. "We used to run 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. Now whole sections are dark, people are packing up and leaving." The effect rippled outward. Suppliers, food vendors, and bus drivers who depended on the factory's workforce faced sudden uncertainty. The numbers told a larger story. In the third quarter of 2025, foreign direct investment in China plunged to just $8.5 billion, a 51% drop from the previous quarter and down 92% from the 2022 peak. Industrial parks that once bustled with activity now stand half empty, a stark sign of capital and jobs fleeing at a pace not seen in decades. Economists have begun to question whether China's downturn is just another dip in the cycle or the start of something much deeper. The numbers are troubling. Retail sales grew only 3.2% in the third quarter of 2025, a figure that once would have set off alarms in Beijing's policy circles. For a country accustomed to year-on-year double-digit growth, this slowdown is more than a blip. It is a warning sign. A leading economist at a Shanghai think tank describes a pattern that goes beyond temporary shocks. Real estate markets remain in crisis with stalled projects and falling prices. Supply chains, once the pride of China's export machine, are fraying as companies relocate production. University graduates, once guaranteed a place in the workforce, now face record unemployment and shrinking opportunities. Early retirements are on the rise, and consumer confidence has faded. The question now hangs in the air. Is the world witnessing a passing storm, or has China's economic miracle run its course? With each new data point, the case for a structural slowdown grows stronger. Yet for millions, the answer remains uncertain, caught between hope for a rebound and the reality of a changing global order. Today, foreign direct investment in China has plunged over 90% from its peak, and factory towns echo with uncertainty. As global supply chains realign, the world's second-largest economy faces a future, written less by its old partners and more by the choices made now. Decoupling isn't just a headline, it is a shift that will shape lives and alliances for decades. What comes next is no longer just China's question. Share your thoughts below.